Welcome everyone to another episode of Retro Wrestling Reviews. Fredo Esparza here, and this week we look back at Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling's January 30th, 1982 show. Before we get to the review, be sure to click that subscribe button. We'll have more wrestling show reviews as well as the Lucha World podcast and other content available on this channel. This episode of Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling was taped on January 27th, 1982 at the WPCQ TV studios in Charlotte, North Carolina, and aired on January 30th, 1982. Bob Caudle and David Crockett are on commentary. Sandy Scott joins them to talk about the NWA World Tag Team Title Tournament. David Crockett mentions that they will have comments from Eddie Graham concerning the title tournament. They show highlights of the Andersons in tag team action. Scott mentions that Ole Anderson will be entering the tag team tournament with a different partner. The first match on the card is Blackjack Mulligan Sr. and Blackjack Mulligan Jr., of course, that being Barry Windham, beating Jeff Sword and Mike Miller after a forearm by Blackjack Jr. for the pin. Roddy Piper joined Bob Caudle on commentary, which pretty much made the show a lot better, just because Piper was very enjoyable on commentary, which he always was. If you watch a lot of Mid-Atlantic and Georgia Championship Wrestling from that time period, he was great on commentary. There was a lot of size in this tag match. All four guys were pretty tall. Obviously, you know about the Mulligans being big guys. Miller and Sword were pretty big as well. Piper started talking about father-son tag teams, including the Mulligans and the Armstrongs. Piper also called Blackjack Jr. Barry a few times, which was something that they weren't really doing that often. I don't think they did it at all in Mid-Atlantic at that point in time. Jr. used his athleticism throughout the match, including a flying head scissors on Mike Miller. Sr. was a bit rougher in the match. At one point, he dropped Jeff Sword badly on his head or shoulder. Basically, he picked them up and just dropped them head and shoulder first onto the mat, which looked really rough. Sword was able to tag out right away. The final moments of the match saw Sword back in the ring, and he got caught by an elbow from Senior, and that was followed by a forearm by Junior for the pin. Senior got in one last shot in on Sword after the match. This was a really rough match for whoever was in there with Blackjack Mulligan Sr. Junior was much smoother. Senior was a little, like I said, it was very rough. Not just rough in the ring, but also rough as far as how he was handling his opponents. Sandy Scott returns to talk about the NWA World Tag Team Title Tournament with Bob Caudle. They show an interview with Eddie Graham, who is the president of the NWA and chairman of the tag team tournament. He mentions this being an exciting assignment and that this tournament will be conducted throughout the world. Ray Stevens then joined Bob Caudle, and they show a video of Jack and Jerry Briscoe from Florida. They show an interview with them conducted by Gordon Soley. The Briscoes talk about entering the NWA World Tag Team Title Tournament and mention several tag teams throughout the world taking part. Stevens praises the Briscoes as a great tag team. They actually air a tag match from Florida featuring the Briscoes, which is Jack and Jerry versus John Davidson and Rick Davidson, the Davidson brothers, which was the same match shown on Georgia Championship Wrestling's January 30th, 1982 episode. Ray Stevens talked about how the Briscoes handled two men bigger than them very easily. Bob Caudle then interviews Jeff Sword and Doug Vines. That was one of the charms of Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, was that they would interview the jobbers or enhancement talent of that time period. So they actually got some TV time. So you actually got to see some of the guys who maybe never really were given an opportunity or even became stars for various reasons. Could have been the promotions, or maybe even themselves having this being a secondary source of income or something that they did as a hobby. But Mid-Atlantic would always have these the enhancement guys do interviews, and some of them were good, some of them were great, and some of them were very bad. So in this interview, Sword mentioned that he and Vines were like brothers and share many things. Sword mentions women, which Caudle quickly asked if they shared women too, which actually was pretty funny. Sword tells him that he'd rather not say anything about that. Vines says he and Sword want to be part of the tag team tournament and think they look alike, so it gives them an advantage. Sword mentions that he and Doug Vines are rated number 10 right now. He says that many of the other tag teams are older and on their way down. That was actually one of the more entertaining interviews. I don't know why they just decided to do that. It's very funny. Second match on the show saw Austin Idol and Ivan Koloff beating Don Gilbert and Keith Larson after Koloff climbed to the top rope and drove Gilbert headfirst into the mat and then covered him for the pin. Before the match started, Idol strutted a bit and slowly removed his robe. Koloff and Idol dominated most of this match. On commentary, Roddy Piper talked about how he would pick a tag team partner that worked a different style to him. David Crockett interrupts them to let him know that he is getting some votes for the contest they are having for the wrestler that contributed the most in 1981, and he gets told Ricky Steamboat is getting the most votes. Piper asks the fans to vote for him and gives them the mailing address for fans to send votes. Larson and Gilbert get in a little offense during the middle of the match, but Idol put a stop to that. Koloff and Idol beat on Gilbert. Idol got him with a swinging neckbreaker. Koloff tossed Gilbert into the corner and then climbed up to the top rope and drove Gilbert headfirst into the mat and covered him for the pin. Match was, like I said, dominated by Idol and Koloff, and really the highlight of the match was really Piper talking about possibly entering the tag team tournament and also being told that he was placing very high for wrestler that contributed most in 1981 in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. After the match, Blackjack, Mulligan Sr. and Jr. joined Bob Caudle for an interview to talk about the tag team tournament. They both are confident that they could win. Blackjack Jr. said he's still not done with Sergeant Slaughter. Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood follow up, and Steamboat is thrilled that he's winning the contest. He talks about getting an NWA World title match against Ric Flair. Jay Youngblood praises Steamboat and says he deserves to be the top contender to Flair. Third match on the show had Don Cornudo and Johnny Weaver beating Private Jim Nielsen and Steve Seibert after Cornudo caught Seibert with a power slam for the pin. Ray Stevens joined Bob Caudle on commentary. A lot of quick tags from Cornudo and Weaver, who showed some great technical skills throughout the match. Caudle mentioned to Stevens that Ric Flair will be in action on next week's TV show. Stevens tells him that Ric Flair's a treat to watch wrestle. Caudle asked Stevens to give him 3 or 4 teams that he thinks are the favorites to win the NWA World Tag Team Title Tournament, and Stevens mentions Ole Anderson and Stan Hansen, but says it will be impossible to just pick 3 or 4 teams. Weaver gets Seibert in a sleeper hold. Sergeant Slaughter shows up ringside. Nelson gets involved, but Cornudo and Weaver take turns beating on Nelson. Weaver goes for a chop at Nelson, but instead hits Cornudo. Nelson tags in Seibert, but Cornudo was ready for him and catches him with a chop. He follows with an elbow and then a power slam to get the pin. Ray Stevens and Bob Caudle talk about Adrian Adonis and Jesse Ventura. They air a video clip of them in tag team action. Adonis looked impressive while Ventura had his opponent in a headlock. That was basically the highlight. Ventura just had his opponent in a headlock while Adonis was doing a lot of stuff in the ring. But, they were a very interesting tag team during that time. Keith Larson and Don Gilbert joined Bob Caudle and talk about the tag team tournament. Larson hopes they can be in the tournament. Gilbert says this is one of the most exciting things that has happened in wrestling. The final match on the show had Jay Youngblood and Ricky Steamboat beating Bill White and Doug Vines after Steamboat picked up Youngblood and slammed him down onto Vines for the pin. Lots of quick tags from Steamboat and Youngblood, as well as lots of chops. Much like the other matches on the show, this match was pretty short, and Steamboat and Youngblood dominated most of it. Sergeant Slaughter and Private Jim Nelson joined Bob Caudle, and Slaughter is upset that Don Cornudo, who got punched by Johnny Weaver during their tag match, shook hands with Weaver and got a pat on the back. Slaughter tells Cornudo that the offer still stands for him to join the Slaughter Brigade. He also says he will be in the tag team tournament. Roddy Piper tells Bob Caudle that he does what he wants to do and will tell everyone who his tag team partner will be when he wants to. He says that his tag partner is scarier than Abdullah the Butcher and well over 6 feet 7 inches, but refuses to say who it is because he's not stupid. Ivan Koloff shows up and thinks Piper called him stupid. Piper backs away and says he didn't call him stupid. Koloff says he is looking around for a tag team partner. He says that he has put up the $1,000 entry fee and has sent word to Russia to send him $20,000 more so he can enter all the tournaments. Austin Idol comes out to talk about the tag team tournament. Roddy Piper returns, and they both mention they won't mention who their partners will be. I thought this was an okay show that mostly focused on the upcoming NWA World Tag tag team title tournament. And this show featured a lot of tag team matches, but pretty much were squash matches. Best part of the show was really Roddy Piper on commentary and him doing his interview segments. That was basically it. And some of the interview segments, I thought the interview with Jeff Swart and Doug Vines was hilarious. I don't know. Just the whole thing where they said that they were like brothers, shared many things, which Bob Caudle quickly, and that's one thing you'll catch with Bob Caudle when he does territorial or independent or smaller promotional shows. When he does interview segments, he's very quick-witted at reacting to stuff that guys are saying, and he was very quick to notice when they were bringing up women that he asked them right away if they shared women too, like in total. Like, you wouldn't expect him to say that in 1982, but I think that kind of tells you how cool Bob Caudle must have been back then. And which is I've been a fan of his work in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and also when he was doing NWA later on. Didn't really get to see the earlier stuff, and now that I'm seeing Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, I'm really enjoying his how good he is on commentary, and also when he does interviews with wrestlers. And this was really hilarious. Just bringing in two guys that maybe don't have a lot to talk about because they're basically just not guys who are getting pushed, and they were able to come up with something to talk about. And Bob Caudle is able to extend the interview and make it entertaining for everyone, which I thought was fun. This was actually an okay show, like I said. Nothing. I don't know there was anything that you would really want to go out of your way to see. But if you're somebody who's trying to watch as much old wrestling as possible, this was a pretty good show. It's nothing that's gonna. You're not gonna think to yourself, I wasted 45 minutes of my life watching this. This was actually pretty entertaining. Plus, Piper on commentary is always a treat. That's it for this review. Be sure to subscribe to the Retro Wrestling YouTube channel, and we'll be back again soon with more reviews.